Okay, so today we're going to be talking about. Oh, should I start? Am I starting? Okay, so we're going to be talking about Zoroastrianism, and I think we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into it because you see why. Zoroastrianism really is a misunderstood belief, and the interesting part about this is that it is a living religion today. It's everywhere, and yet so many do not know about this belief system. Sorry, we have a whole bunch of ambient noise going on in the background. So there you have it. Uh, you know, what's interesting about it is that Zoroastrianism has around 2.6 million followers or more. And, but the problem is, sorry, so we're having apparently some drunken people that are following around out beyond us. It's kind of getting in the way. So we're outside, and so we're having some interesting moments. Okay, so I'll keep on going. Hey, why not? It'll make it for a more interesting video, right? that we are outside besides a fast food restaurant, and because of COVID-19 situations, we have to do things, obviously outdoors for everybody's health benefits. But sometimes we have very strange interruptions. And apparently we had two drunken individuals who are continually falling out or falling down as we speak.
They're kids.
They're kids. So they're not even drunk. Skateboarding. Oh, that's worse. Okay. So here we go. So 2.6 million, right? Now, the exact number is obscured because of various persecutions. And so not everybody is going to admit they're practitioners of Zoroastrianism in the Middle East, where there is the center of this belief system, right? So for example, we heard in Iran in 1979, we know that there's 21,400 Zoroastrians that lived there at the time of the Iranian Revolution. But since then, we have lost track. So let's go into Zoroastrianism in general. The word Zoroastrianism is named after Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra. And so we call it Zoroastrianism. Now, the problem is that many practitioners of Zoroastrianism are not too comfortable with this title. The reason being is they do not worship Zoroaster. They worship Ahura Mazda, who is the great god of light. And so it's kind of the same controversy that occurred when it came to Islam years ago. Did you guys know that years ago, they referred to Islam in the Western world in some texts as Mohammedanism? Obviously, this is a problem, right? Practitioners of Islam do not worship Muhammad in any way. But in fact, when I was at Cal State Fullerton back in the late 1980s, I had a professor by the name of Jack Krabs, and we're taking a class on Islam, and he actually had a book that we were using called Mohammedanism. It's like, well, it's the same problem when it comes to Zoroastrianism. They're a little bit more comfortable with it, but not quite. So what do we call them? Well, that's interesting. Well, a lot of scholars will use the word Mazdaism because they worship Ahura Mazda. Why not call it Mazdaism? And they like that. A lot of them, in fact, we'll have quite a few practitioners of Mazdaism watching this in the near future. I'll tell you why in just a few moments. But for them, they call their own belief Mazda Yazda. Mazda Yazda. What does Mazda Yazda mean? Well, Yazda means worship. So Mazda Yazda means worshipers of Mazda. I like that, right? Mazda Yazda. Where did Zoroastrianism originate? It originated, well, they'll say ancient Persia, but you can also say it's Bactria, which is ancient Afghanistan. That's where Zoroastrianism or Mazda Yazda originated, right? And it became more predominant during the unification of the Persian Empire. And eventually, it became the state religion as well. The first record of this belief system is mentioned by the Greek historian Herodotus, and in the 5th century BCE. And he discusses their connection with those known as the Magi, who constituted as the 6th tribe of the Medes. As we know, the Medes combined with the Persians to create the empire. So the Magi were oftentimes persecuted, even by some of the early Persian rulers, but this appeared to have stopped during the reign of Darius I, who reigned from 550 to 486 BCE, and he became actually a devotee of Ahura Mazda. So from that date on, Mazdaism predominated throughout the empire, and eventually, of course, as I said, became the state religion. Of course, what's interesting is the Magi then were understood as the high priests of Mazdaism. Now, I have to say that many bells should be ringing right now. Thinking, what's going on here? We hear the word we hear the word Magi, and don't we think about the 3 wise men in the story in the New Testament who visit the baby Jesus and they follow the star? What I think is interesting from my perspective is that people who were living at that time understood Magi as the high priests of Mazdaism. They did. They simply did. So, but what will happen is that in our current era, or those who are not familiar with Mazdaism, we will call them wise men, or we'll call them those who are practitioners of maybe magic, right? And that is not true. That's not who they are. You'll see in a little bit why this is important. Because what will happen is with Mazdaism is that they have a Jesus-like figure. Seriously, we're going to go there. And so it looks like that the person who created that narrative is trying to say, hey, look, even the high priests of Mazdaism believe that Jesus is the Redeemer. Does that make sense? So it seemed to be, I mean, it could be historical if you believe that. Either way, you're still stuck with the idea that practitioners of Zoroastrianism, or as I like to say, Mazdaism, are part of this narrative. But you'll see why more in a little bit. So Mazdaism dates prior to the Abrahamic religions, at least most of them, right? At least most of them. I mean, you do have a little bit of contemporaneous aspects when it comes to Judaism, but once we look into it, the Judaism that we are familiar with, the one that is the post-Babylonian captivity one, Mazdaism is still earlier. But there's a lot of similarities between Mazdaism and Judaism and Christianity and Islam. And we're going to go into that right now. First of all, Mazdaism is founded by a prophet who was viewed as just a man, much like you would see with Muhammad, right, in Islam. And when it comes to Judaism, of course, you're going to have prophets as the founding aspect of many aspects of Judaism. You're going to have, a prophet-like situation with John the Baptist in Christianity. So there's some similarities there. Number two, they are centered around, Mazdaism centered around a holy book. So there's a sacred writings that is considered authoritative from their perspective. Well, you're going to see the same thing when it comes to the Torah, in Judaism, the same thing when it comes to the Bible, the New Testament included within Christianity. And you're going to have the same thing, obviously, with the Quran in Islam. So they all have a sacred text. That's a second similarity. The third is that those who are followers of Ahura Mazda believe they are a chosen people. They are a chosen people. Well, you're going to see that in Judaism. You're going to see that in Christianity, especially early on. And you're going to see that in Islam amongst the Arabs, right? Moving right along, fourth, Zoroastrianism, or I should say Mazdaism, brought in this idea, this dualism between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. Light versus the darkness. You're going to see this in all three of the Abrahamic religions. Number five, Mazdaism defines a definitive evil one. There is an evil one, and it's known as Angra Manu. You'll hear different ways of how it's said, but some would say Agraman, so Agramanu, and he will become the very image of the offender of Satan within later on in Judaism, and then into Christianity, and then also into Islam. But it's fascinating if you're looking at strictly from a document perspective, a historical perspective. The first references to it happens to be within the context of Mazdaism. So it seems to be early on. Number six, there is a battle between those who are demons versus those who are good spirits or angels. You see this battle going on, angels and demons. Well, Mazdaism has this conflict between the two, between those known as the Azata, who are angels, and yes, the demons. And you're going to see this also in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Number seven, Mazdaism has a defined eschatology, the idea of the end of the world. They do. They have the idea of a redeemer showing up. They have the idea of two judgments, a great throne judgment. They even have a molten fiery lake. I mean, you name it. It's all there. The eschatology. Again, this eschatology seems to predate that we see in Judaism, predates that as we see in Christianity as well as Islam. So many scholars will say that the eschatological ideas within the Abrahamic religions are really first formulated as a result of Mazdaism. By the way, also Mazdaism has the idea of the resurrection of the dead. Yeah, that's in there too. Number eight, Mazdaism is there it is, a resurrection of the dead. I guess kind of threw that with eschatology. Okay, it works together. And number nine, the belief, of course, in a savior figure, where the faithful follow in the end, and the condemned, those who are evil, who are guilty, are punished. So you could see here why this talk is important, because you can see the influences going from Mazdaism into the Abrahamic religions. Once again, the problem is, and it is a problem, is that Mazdaism is earlier than many of these others. Now, as I said, they have a great prophet, Zoroaster, known as Zarathustra. Zoroaster is the Greek word, if you're curious about it, who had this conversion experience at the age of 30. Then he was called to do his mission, much like Jesus was called at the age of 30 to do his mission. You got to watch out for ages like 30 or 40, because you could be called as a prophet, right? The god, as I mentioned, is known as Ahura Mazda. Ahura means being, and Mazda means mind. So the name literally means the being of the mind. So it's the ever-present mind of the universe, who's always in existence, right? Perpetually creating and maintaining all things. This is what was considered alone as good, as true. So he created the universe, and Zarathustra or Zoroaster said that all should worship this one God. And so it seems to be monotheistic. However, what's interesting about Zoroaster is that, well, the problem is that all should worship this God, but he seems to recognize that this God is present in all the other different religions. We're going to go there in a little bit. So it's not exclusivistic. He just says that basically, in many ways, he's the God behind the gods. And we'll travel there in a little bit. As I said, as far as when this comes about, no, this is controversial. So if you're a practitioner of monotheism, you may say that this belief system goes back possibly thousands of years. So, you know, Zarathustra lived thousands of years ago. But others within the belief system of monotheism will say maybe around 1500 BCE, 1500 BCE that he lived. And some people will say because there's linguistic links in the way he's described with the Vedas, the early Vedic writings, which of course is 1500 to 1000 BCE. There seems to be similarities there. So possibly that early. Others, though, some of the activities and revelations seem more consistent with the context between 700 to around, well, at least not 500 BCE, because you already have Darius the First accepting this belief, but around 700, 600 BCE. I seem to favor the date around 600, 700, 600 BCE. But still, if you guys are taking a look at the dating of these systems, this is still, you know, 600 to 700 years before Christianity. You know, this is beyond 1,000 years before the advent of Islam. And when it comes to Judaism, the more modern form of Judaism that has these ideas are very much within monotheism, doesn't happen until around 500 or 400 BCE, which is still 200 years earlier. Is this helping? So once again, we're kind of stuck with an earlier context with this belief system. Okay, so let's talk about this prophet. He grew up in Zarathustra, grew up within a very polytheistic background. Animal sacrifices were used to appease the gods, very common. Also, rituals using drugs and other intoxicants were also applied to get you into a proper mindset, right, for the rituals. He was born within what's called the Spitama clan in eastern Iran. Eastern Iran. He was a priest. He had a wife. He had 3 sons and 3 daughters, right? But he grew weary of the animal sacrifices, as well as using drugs for the various rituals, and started to move against them as a priest. One day, Zarathustra was on his way to the Data River, and he was attacked by those, well, we'll go there in a few seconds. He was there to collect water for a plant ritual. So he began to have visions that occurred over a period of time as he visited this river. And so he's having all these revelations. And what I think is fascinating is he's so emphatic, he believes it's really happening to him, and nobody's converting. Nobody's believing him. In fact, only his good old cousin, Maid Yomana, was his only convert, which makes you kind of wonder if his wife even converted over. I mean, at least at first in Islam, right, you have the wife of Muhammad, Khadija, converting, right, early on, right? And you got Ali, although I'll have to say Muhammad had some difficulty at first, and then suddenly things moved about. Well, apparently Zarathustra is having lots of problems, and people simply aren't believing. And then the other problem is that you have demons that are supposedly attacking him. So he's got people ignoring him, and then he's got demons attacking him. Well, what demons? Well, according to the Vendata, which is one of the under the umbrella of the Avestas, which is their holy writings, Zarathustra was attacked by those known as the Buti. We can phonetically spell it B-U-I-T-I. These are the demons from the realm of hell of the north. And they're described as deceiving, as the unseen death. But the prophet, of course, fought against them. It says the will of the Lord is the law of righteousness. And what happened is that he offered sacrifices to the good waters of the good data. He received the profession of the worshipers of Mazda. And what he does is he does a ritual, and these demons flee, the Buti. And you're going, so why are you spending time talking about these Buti? Well, it's interesting because the Buti it's a corrupt word of the word but, which is connected to the idea of those demons that inspire idol worship, the but. And it's mentioned as the but are connected to those who are worshipers of these idols, known as the but-asp, the but-asp. Now, suddenly things should be connecting. So you got these demons that allure people to worship images or idols. And then you have the but-asp, who are those who follow after these demons. You know that this but-asp is a corrupt word of the word bodhisattva. Now I got your attention. As in Buddhism. You see, as it turns out, a form known as Mahayana Buddhism had spread into Eastern Persia at that time. And by the way, the remnants are still there today. And so that is basically the religious competition. And even though Buddhism does not stress the veneration of images per se, it is the earlier form, right? With Mahayana Buddhism, images are used, right? And so this form enters in the conversation. And so what will happen is that you're going to have the local competition. People are Buddhists or they're animists, and there seems to be no room for Mazdaism, except for, the cousin. Thank you, cousin, right? So what does he do? What do you do when nobody converts? It's called you move your location. So what he does, he's pretty upset by this whole thing. And so, he's, so after 12 years of not converting anybody, he moves to a place known as Bactria. Bactria is current day Afghanistan. A little moment of dramatic pause, right? And there was a king by the name of Vishtaspa. Vishtaspa was convinced by the prophet's words. And eventually he has his whole kingdom convert over as a result. In those days, if the king converts over to a belief system, in many cases, everybody else should convert over. That's just the way things were, especially in the ancient Middle East. So this is kind of what happened. But it still wasn't easy going, because at first, while King Vishtaspa was convinced, his enemies were not. And the enemies, who happened to be part of the royal court, said that the prophet was planting incriminating poisons in his quarters, that the prophet was doing this evil, secretive magic, and so based upon the words of these people, these courtiers, Zarathustra is thrown into prison without even bread or water. So what happens is this. Well, the king's favorite black horse became very sick. And seeing this opportunity, Zarathustra said that with the aid of the god of light, he could heal his horse. Looks like a great possibility. So wanting his horse to live, he figures the king has nothing to lose, right? He calls the prophet to do his healing magic. You know, the outcome is going to be a happily ever after, right? Because what happens is that horse is healed better than before. The king says, look, it looks like he's practicing good kinds of magic as opposed to evil magic. We're converting. And so that's exactly what happens. After that point, Zarathustra, he journeys deep into India. He goes to the region of Kashmir, where he planted a cypress tree. This supposedly grew for thousands of years, but it was chopped down by the Caliph Mutawakil in the year 861 CE. Zarathustra was a vegetarian. He was a vegetarian. With that said, however, he did not mandate that people eat only vegetables. He was carnivores could be followers. Just he himself made that choice to be a vegetarian, and he died in the 70s. How he died, there's lots of stories. One of them goes as follows: that he was in a temple with a rosary in his hands, and he was in prayer. And suddenly, there was this certain man by the name of Brokrish, and he was. And so what happened is that he came up from behind the prophet, and he had plunged the sword into the prophet in the middle of his prayer. And the story goes up that immediately the one who plunged the sword into Zarathustra, he burst into flame, and that was the end of him. But unfortunately, Zarathustra also died. So there are many legends that surrounded Zarathustra or Zoroaster. Pliny the Elder, I want to bring him up because remember, Pliny the Elder, he lived into the 1st century BCE into the 1st century CE. So he's contemporaneous to the time of Christianity. But still Christianity takes a while to spread. So it's interesting because remember, he is a witness to the earlier aspects of monotheism. He said, there is no doubt, this is a voice speaking from 2,000 years ago, there is no doubt that this art of magic originated in Persia under Zoroaster, this being a point upon which authors are generally agreed. But whether there was only one Zoroaster or whether in later times there was a second person of that name is a matter which still remains undecided. Eudoxius, who has endeavored to show that of all branches of philosophy, the magic art is the most illustrious and the most beneficial, informs us that this Zoroaster existed 6,000 years before the death of Plato, an assertion in which he is supported by Aristotle. Hermicus, again, an author who has written with the greatest exactness in all particulars connected with this art, and has commented upon the 2 million verses left by Zoroaster. So obviously there's a lot of materials that existed ascribed to Zoroaster by 100 CE. Connected with this art, has commented upon the 2 million, besides completing indexes of several of his works, has left a statement that agnosis, with the name of the master from whom Zoroaster derived his doctrines, and that lived 5,000 years before the time of the Trojan War. And so he's talking about, so you've seen here, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that from the perspective of the Romans, monotheism is really ancient. I mean, really ancient. So you can't doubt that. But the funny thing is, they mentioned where black magic comes from. They talk about the fact that black magic actually arise from a certain Ostanes, who was a follower of, Zoroaster along the line, and he took that which is magic and manipulated it. And you're looking at me, and I know you are, going, magic, magic, magic. I don't know what's going on here. So here we go. I mean, don't the Greeks, the Romans, everybody practice magic? I mean, what are you talking about? Okay, so here we go. The ancients did not call magic magic. They didn't use that word. So from their perspective, they're just doing acts of ritual power. They are doing negotiations. They're doing prayers. They're doing various actions, but it's not magic. So the origins of the word magic stems from monotheism, and it is the workings of the magi. That's why they're called magi. So they do magic. So what happens is the Greeks and Romans, they go, well, anybody who's doing exotic magic that we don't understand, that's outside of our comprehension, that we'll call that magic because we don't understand it. It's mysterious. It's out there. But we just do our religion. We just do our beliefs. Is this helpful? So the word magic didn't mean what we think of it today. It was simply within monotheism. Now, what will happen is they go, those people in Anatolia, they don't quite follow the Greek and Roman rituals the way we do. That's kind of exotic. I guess we'll call that magic too. Those Egyptians, they practice something that the acts that don't seem to follow what we believe in either. We'll call that magic. Now all of a sudden it moves from, this is good, right? It moves from just those who are practitioners of monotheism, as done by the Magi, to anybody other than ourselves and their forms of ritual power and negotiation. Is this helpful? Eventually, they'll take on the names themselves. So it is a process. They are learning too much. But hey, is this helpful? Was this good, right? So that's where we get the term from. So now we have magic. And then, of course, the idea is you have magic, you have good magic, and maybe you have evil magic. And so early on, they had this idea of black magic also stemming from monotheism. So, and this kind of moves into, which I think is interesting, is this idea actually moves into Hermeticism, where magic and mysterious ideas are connected to Zoroaster, as I talked about in my lecture on Hermeticism. This is why they go, it must come from monotheism. So monotheism is far more powerful an influence than you expect. Okay, now that we clear that up, feel better, right? So what are we talking about here? Okay, as with Judaism and as with Islam, as well as Christianity, you do have the concept of a holy book. It's known as the Avestas. The Avestas are the book of the law. I'm not going to go into detail on this. I'll just give you the outline here. The Avestas are divided into first liturgical works, like hymns ascribed to Zarathustra. Second, they have collections of invocations and rituals to be used during various festivals. Third, they are hymns of praise. Fourth, they have spells against demons, as well as prescriptions of purification. So these are the Avestas. In many ways, the Avestas almost mirror the Vedas in many ways. You'll see that there seems to be a connection between how they're kind of put together, and we'll go on into that in a little bit. The earlier section of the Avestas are called the Yasna. The Yasna, which means worship or oblations, and there are 72 of these yasnas or sections, and that will be important later because they tie themselves with a special girdle that has 72 connections. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, but moving right along, also, of course, you have another work known as the Disparad, which again has additional prayers for special times of the day. You have another work called the Vinidad, which is, of course, given against the demons. This, of course, goes into evil spirits. but also goes into the creation stories. You also have the yacht, which is the worship by praise. So there you have it. Okay, so we'll go into detail, but I'm going to go more into the content of these than specifically how each one's composed. Now, according to the Avestas, now we know that's the holy work. Zarathustra was not the first person that Ahura Mazda revealed himself to. He revealed himself first to Yima, Y-I-M-A. He was the first one. He was chosen. But he said that he was unworthy to spread the message of Ahura Mazda. So Ahura Mazda said, that's okay. You can make humanity fruitful and multiply. You can do that. You can make more people. And then we can work on the conversion part later on. And that will be Zarathustra. Does that make sense? So Yima makes the world fruitful and multiply. He is given actually this really mystical, magical seal, which gives him the power of making sure that people are always healthy, as well as the animals, as well as the plants, healthy, abundant, long life. Yeah, and so people start to expand. Oh, yeah, they expand. Too much so. So what happens is that Yima, so 300 winters pass by, and everybody's doing pretty well. But what happens is after 300 years, the earth is overpopulated. Because, nobody's dying. There's too many people. So what are you going to do? So what happens is Ahura Mazda grows the earth 2/3 larger than before. So he just makes the earth bigger. And it fits more people. Okay. So, well, after 900 years, it gets to be a problem, this golden seal, right? Humanity is still expanding too much. So here's a story. What happens is Ahura Mazda, what he does, there's no disease, there's no death, how wonderful that is. But there has to be some kind of limit. And we're going to also have the introduction of the opposer, Angromanu, who's going to try to limit life, is going to try to also create disease. So what will happen is that humanity is under siege. And as a result, we'll talk more about Angromanu, who's the dark one, who's the opposer of Ahura Mazda in a little bit. But just know that his influence is now being felt amongst humanity. And so brings across a great winter upon the earth. There is a great ice age. This ice age, what happens is that, long and the short of it is that Ahura Mazda told Yima that you need to build a vara. You need to build a vara. Within this vara, which is a large shaped enclosure, I want you to collect 2 specimens of each living thing in the earth to protect them from the great disaster that is to come. So they're placed into this vara, which, by the way, is huge. It's as big as a field, right? And here, there was, of course, they have oxen and men, of dogs, of birds, of red blazing fires. I don't know what that means. Probably to keep the vara warm because, ice age. And they built also great dwelling places. So there are people who are actually living there, but there are also the seeds of humanity, the seeds of animals, and the seeds of plants placed in there. They mentioned there's 9 streets, six in the middle part, 3 in the smallest. And we have descriptions. They even mentioned balconies of these places. It's a pretty cool place. What happens, you guess, is that the vara, the ice surrounds the vara, humanity is preserved, and then the ice melts, and you know what's going to happen? A great flood. It's a flood story. Yeah, and the great flood happens, and fortunately, because the enclosure is apparently waterproof, everybody and the seeds of humanity are saved. Isn't that great? Thank you, Yima. Thank you, Ahura Mazda. Okay. So unfortunately, though, after that point, we have death and we have disease. So this is now part of the human condition. Angra Mainyu is of course the opposer. He's causing this to happen. Now I don't want to go into detail about this. It's very long, written down, but I want to mention that the Avestas talk about then the migrations of those who are followers of Ahura Mazda as they go from geographical place to place. And I'm taking a look at this, and it's fascinating because it turns out that they call the people who follow Ahura Mazda, they call them the Aryan Vyas. Aryan Vyas. And you can see what that word is, Aryan. They're the Aryans. So they're the Indo-Europeans. And we're taking a look, and according to the Vendata, the Avestas, they lived together in one homeland years ago, which is called the time of the Golden Age. This is before, the banishing. This is before old age and death. And the Yima is the one who came across and appeared. But the Avestas, what it does is actually traces the route of the Aryan from place to place and mentions geographical locations. And you go through the geographical locations, and I have them all here. And they mentioned 15 of them, and we have actually located over half of them. And it turns out it's accurate to the actual migrations of the Indo-Europeans. Isn't that fascinating? That it really does chart historical information that we know through archaeology, through the material culture. It traces them from the Caucasus Mountain area around 5000 BCE. And we did have the ice age before that, between 13,000 to 10,000 BCE. You do have that kind of stuff. Some people say maybe it's the Black Sea flood. That's a possibility there. But something happens, and they trace them, and they traces them from that area into Iran. One group going into Mesopotamia, another group going to Afghanistan, and going all the way to India, and in the end, all the way even to the northern eastern section of India. Isn't that fascinating? So yeah, right. So these ideas, right, replicate over and over again. In fact, it says that they got as far as the Punjab. So there you have it. Okay, so let's go into the theology. Right? So Mazda is theology. It is strongly dualistic. By the way, of course, he was taken up into heaven. He had these visions, and he was told that Ahura Mazda has an opposer, and this is Angra Mainyu. So while Ahura Mazda is the all great God of light, of goodness, of beauty, of power and strength, Angra Mainyu is the evil God of darkness, of strife, of misgivings, right? And so there's a battle between the two. Now what happens is that we have a choice to follow after Ahura Mazda or Angra Mainyu. It's our personal decision by our actions. So it is a religion of freedom of choice. So you can choose either way. They do have a holy law known as Daena, Daena, which is equivalent to the idea of Dharma. This is the holy law that's revealed to humanity through that which is called the holy words, or the Matra Spenta. Also, we have something called the Asha, which constitutes as the equitable law governing the entire universe. So there you have that. Devotees believe that, how do we go here? I just want to tell the story. I like telling the story without using my notes, if you don't mind, because I want to use my hands. So give me a few seconds here. I don't want it to blow away though. That would be not good, right? Blow it away. Okay. Okay. So make sure I got here. Okay. Yeah. So what happens is this: is you got Ahura Mazda above, and he emanates a spiritual realm known as Mitak, which is kind of egg shaped. And then from there, it emanates another realm called Itak. So these wonderful words, right? So you have these emanations coming from the one pure God that's of goodness, of light. See these emanations. And what will happen is Agromanyu is down below, and he is like the great copier. He just wants to kind of copy anything that that Ahura Mazda does. So for every good Mittag and Itak, right, that Ahura Mazda creates, Agromanyu makes an evil Mittag and Itak, an evil version. It's like Dr. Evil, It's like we're going to make an evil version. So that's kind of what happens. They just kind of balance each other up. There is this, and then what happens is that what proceeds forth from Ahura Mazda are what's called the Amesha Spenta. The Amesha Spenta, which are the divine sparks. So you guess what's going to happen. So what will happen is Agromanyu is going to basically create an evil form of the Amesha Spenta to correspond with that. Then, of course, moving on down, Ahura Mazda will make messengers or angel-like. They're known as the Yazata. Well, guess what? Yes, you can see what's going to happen. Guess what Agromanyu is going to do? He's going to make an evil version of these Yazata or these angels, and they will be the demons. See, back, forth, back, forth. That making sense? So it is a competition, one emanating downwards, one emanating upwards, and you can see the two are going to meet eventually. But before we go to that point, let's talk about the Amesha Spenta. The Amesha Spenta, these divine sparks, each of which has an evil corresponding evil spark from the standpoint of Agromanyu, right? So the Amesha Spenta are also known as the bounteous immortals. There are 6 sparks. So 6 good sparks, and you can guess there's 6 evil sparks, right? The first one is known as Vahu Mana. Vahu Mana, this good spark is understood as good purpose. So this spark gives us a realization that there's a good purpose to all things. Through this divine spark, Ahura Mazda was able to establish within themselves a well-balanced and more stable state of mind, enable each to properly fulfill their obligations. So this Amesha Spenta. Second, coming from here, is called the Asa Vahista, not Asa La Vista, Asa Vahista. That is truth and righteousness. This is the direct opposite to one of the other sparks from the evil one, known as Druj, which is the lie, right? So while Asa Bahista is the spark of truth, Agromanyu will create the Druj, which means the spark of lying, right? So back and forth, going through that. Now, also you're going to have Agromanyu will create not only the demon of falsehood and lies and wickedness, but she has a host of others that follow after her. She dwells in the northern region around Mount Arusa. And whenever somebody dies, according to the story, this evil spark known as Druj Nasu takes the form of a fly, right? Emerges out of the evil mountain and seizes the soulless corpse and with her other hosts. So when you see like a dead body and there's all these flies, they could be Druj, they could be demons feeding upon the leftovers of this empty carcass where no soul no longer remains. That's interesting, right? So that's sort of the fly story. Watch out. And she's able to make herself into a multiplicity of evil spirits or flies. So watch out for these flies. Kind of spooky, right? Yeah, okay, anyway. The third Amesha Spenta are known as the Zathra Vira which is his desirable dominion. The fourth is known as the Spenta Armati. Armati. This is, of course, holy devotion, you know. Although you can maybe see Armati, maybe it's a suit. I don't know. So moving right along. Fifth was the Haravatit. Haravatit is interesting. Haravatit is his wholeness. Now, what's interesting about Haravatit is that this is a feminine spark. It's a feminine spark, and the concept is that this spark builds on the fact that all is intact within the kingdom of God, and it's not only everything is complete, but everything is bountiful in its plurality. Plurality. Can't talk. Plurality. There you go. She is connected specifically to a spark that makes all of nature fulfilled. Okay, so that's her. There's another one. It's called Armatit, and that is also a feminine spark, and is viewed as the connection to the idea of eternity. Right. So these two sparks are oftentimes matched together. These two feminine sparks, and the idea is empowering endurance and strength, and connected to all the earth and to plant life. Harvatat raining or watering through her wholeness, and Armatit feeding life through her powers of immortality. And of course, what will happen, is, of course, there's, Agramanya is going to have the evil ones, which are the opposite. And one, of course, is Tarsha, who is thirst, and Shud, who is hunger. So you're going to see that you have this balance. Now, before I go further, I just want to mention something on this. The Amesha Spenta, so how are they connected to Ahura Mazda? They are Ahura Mazda. What do you mean? It's Ahura Mazda in 6 aspects. Now, that should kind of ring a bell here. You go, wait a minute. So they are Ahura Mazda. Yes, there are 6 sparks coming from Ahura Mazda, but they are all Ahura Mazda of many different names, but still one. And they're worshipped independently, but they're still seen as connected together as working in harmony. And you're going, well, this is rather strange. You guys ever heard of the Christian Trinity? We already have this idea within Mazda. Isn't that fascinating? You already have God, except as opposed to being in 3 aspects, you have him in 6 aspects. Okay. I feel like I'm getting dangerous. Moving right along. Okay, so below the Amesha Spenta, of course, you have those Yazata, those angels. These are lesser spirits. These are messengers. The Yazata were worshipped as well. And of course, those who are evil, they worship the demonic counterparts, right? We have a few important ones. One's called Sharausha. Sharausha is known as the sleepless one, the Yazata, who is the sleepless one. He's always vigilant. He is believed to protect the home, as well as protect those who are doing the rituals within the home. So Sharosa is called upon to keep the hearth burning, protect the flame from its evil designs, and of course, especially Azai the Haka. Azai the Haka translation means the fiendish snake. That's right. So what happens is that Sharosha has to always fight this evil snake demon as a counterpart. Azai Dahaska is part human, part snake, having 3 mouths, 6 eyes, and 3 heads. Sometimes is portrayed as a simple man with 2 snakes emerging from his shoulders. And this is, of course, where Angramanyu touched his shoulders and 2 snakes appeared. Well, this will be the constant adversary of course, of Sharosha. And what does this have to do with your sacrifice? Well, you have a sacrifice in your home and on your temple. You ought to make sure that nothing goes wrong, in the snake-like sense. And obviously, also sometimes the evil one is attributed to, things getting knocked over and burning your house down or your temple, right? Or the ritual not going right, you trip, So Sharosha is there to protect you from this snake-like one. Accordingly, this snake is from Babylon. Wow, we're just kind of connecting with all these religions here. Babylon. Ahazahasca is going to be captured, placed in chains, imprisoned within Mount Damarat. But with this said, the great serpent will be released once more to wreak havoc upon the earth before the final destruction. Okay, this is interesting. So you can see overlap of different beliefs going on all over the place. Sharosa also fights a demon by the name of Ashma, not Asthma, but Ashma, right? Who attempts to distract those who are offering worship. He's the one that makes you kind of lose your train of thought. So you got to watch out for this demon, Ashma. So Sharosha keeps you wide awake and vigilant, right? Okay, there's also, of course, Druj Nazu, who we talked about, the lying one. Sharosa fights against this particular one as well. Sharosha is assisted by a bird by the name of Parodarsh, who basically is this inspired rooster. So this rooster is, this animal, is this bird is one that helps Sharosha and this rooster. They actually fight together against the demons. Okay, so Sharosha is to be found at the Chinvat Bridge. So here we go. So basically, I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But what happens is that we're going back into eschatology. So let's move from Sharosha, although Sharosha will be connected to the Chinvat Bridge. Let's go more into the eschatology. So we talked about the emanations, right? We talked about Ahura Mazda is emanating, Betag, Etag, right? Emanating these universes, right? And then you have the Amesha Spenta emanating from Ahura Mazda. We talked about Angra Mainyu, who's emanating these evil form of the Amesha Spenta. We talked about that. Then we talked about Angra Mainyu emanating the Yazata. And then we talked about Ahura Mazda emanating, Ahura Mazda emanating the Yazata. Then you have Angra Mainyu, who's emanating the demons. So it looks like they're slowly meeting together. So what Ahura Mazda does is he emanates then the very lower part of the heavens, the ideal bull, B-U-L-L, and the ideal man. Now, the best way to describe this in layman's terms is to look at them as pinatas. What? They're pinatas. They're filled with the seeds of different kinds of things. The bowl is filled with the seeds of all good plants and all good animals. The ideal man pinata is filled with the seeds of humanity. And they are kind of hanging there like low hanging fruits. And so Angra Mainyu is going, I'm going to try to copy it, So he smashes the ideal bull, and out come the seeds of plants, and out come the seeds of animals, good ones, good plants, good animals. Well, you know what he's going to do? He's Dr. Evil, right? Angra Mainyu is going to make, for every good plant, there's going to be a evil plant. With every good animal, there's going to be a evil animal. Are you guys following this? He's got it. We're going to go ahead and smash now the ideal man. He smashes the ideal man. Out comes the seeds of humanity. And he's like, uh-oh, I can't make a copy of this. Oh, no, I can't make any copy because they have full, complete soul that comes from above, that comes from Ahura Mazda, that fire of life. What am I going to do? So, and this has moved Angra Mainyu into the realm of this battleground between the forces of light and forces of darkness. What is he going to do? So now the battle has moved from a cosmological sense into the interior sense. Got it? Now the battle is within every person's soul. That's where the battle is. So what will happen is that when you are born, you're actually you're a soul, and that soul splits in half. And as you live, you have this oversoul that watches everything that you do, and you have this undersoul that lives life. Got it? And in this battle, Ahura Mazda is trying to you follow Ahura Mazda and do good things and live your life accordingly, or you can follow Angramanyu and do evil things. So by those actions determines where you're going to go. You guys got it? Then when you die, your oversoul, which is like a guardian spirit, will reunite with your undersoul, and it will tattle on you. It'll tell whether you've been good, been naughty, or if you've been nice. That's what happens. So we get to that point, and now all of a sudden, guess who you meet? Yeah, Sharosha. There's Sharosha. You've died. You got this narking guardian spirit saying, hey, you know, you were at the Chinvat Bridge, or the Bridge of Judgments. And there are also two guardians, one known as Rashnu and the other is known as Mithras. Yes, Mithras, as in the cult of Mithras. There's a connection there. So all the souls of the deceased must cross this bridge, the great chasm of the realm of life into the realm of death. Meanwhile, the three guardians pass judgment upon the soul as they cross this bridge. Of course, Yazata, the Sharosa Yazata, is the one that accompanies you as you cross this bridge. And what will happen is that they'll see if your soul is truthful, is considered what they call Asha. Now, if you're truthful, if you've been good, and you know you have, right? If you've been good, that bridge is going to be wide. It's going to be strong. It's going to be firm. And you're going to cross that chasm. Wow, how wonderful that is. And who will meet you is this beautiful spirit known as Dene. This is a lady spirit of revelation. She will be there with a big grin on her face. She is known as a sweet-smelling maiden, right? Well-dressed, they say. Apparently, the Avesta Zoroastrianism is interested in what they're wearing. She's well-dressed and of unsurpassed beauty. So it is. And so in some cases, is the idea she is the one who completes the soul. Okay. And so what happens then is you go into what's called the House of Song. It's a paradise. It has everything you want. You know, wild horses, wild other kinds of, grasslands, ponds, streams, that's kind of what they have. So it's a happy, blissful place, the House of Song. So you're there. What if you're bad? What if you're a liar, right? So you're going to cross this bridge. Once again, this bridge, by the way, sometimes they compare it to a rainbow. They'll actually refer to it as like a rainbow bridge. Others will say, actually, this bridge is the Milky Way that you're crossing over. So if you've been bad, that bridge suddenly becomes twisted and turns and narrow, and it throws you down, into the realm of darkness, into the place known as the House of Lies. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, and you know who meets you before, as you're on the bridge before you get knocked off? You're met by a certain demon by the name of Visrush, who casts you down, or you're met by a foul-smelling old woman, who throws you into this dark realm. So it can go either way. Now, a lot of people will say there's the other aspect of the soul. So in some cases, some modern practitioners of Mazdaism will go, well, actually, it's your counterpart. Maybe it's like animus anima. And so what happens is that if you're female, it'll be like this handsome dude that smells good. If you've been good, and if you've been bad, it's gonna be a foul smelling guy. And if you're male, then it's gonna be a sweet smelling woman. The other half, does that make sense? Or it's gonna be a foul smelling woman. So hey, so you have that perspective because monotheism, excuse me, is interesting, except for India, does allow for female priests. So there is a sense of equality. In fact, we'll talk about later, women are considered equal within this belief system. Is this cool? You guys learn anything? So yeah, they'll allow for these ideas to take place. So you go into this terrible place, the house of lies. It's fire, it's brimstone. They're pouring molten lead down your throat. You're drowned. You're thrown in water. You're starting to drown. And what happens though is that it's just like Tartarus, or just like the hell that you see within various works of apocrypha of what hell is supposed to be like within Christianity. So it's a terrible place, and they have weeping and gnashing of teeth, and also the food's not very good. What? The food is just terrible. And I thought to myself when I'm reading this, going, why? Who cares about the food? They're pouring molten lead down your throat. And I'm thinking to myself, Zoroastrianism, are you a chef? Are you a cook? Why do you care about how the food is bad after mentioning all these other terrible things? But anyway, there you have it. So after that happens, okay, that's the first judgment. And you're there within the house of lies or house of songs for a certain period of time. That's the first great judgment. Then you're going to have the second great judgment. Is this something familiar at all? The second great judgment. And this occurs, of course, where evil is finally going to become defeated. This is where there is a great apocalypse. The sun and the moon and the stars, they will be darkened. There will be this endless winter. Humanity's morals will fall apart. People will not respect their elders, and religion will also start to falter. And Angra Mainyu will appear to gain power. Does this sound familiar? Remember, this belief system is before the apocalyptic ideas are well formed within Judaism, and it's before Christianity, and it's before Islam. So this is kind of important that they already have this concept of the end of time and what's happening there. At this point, a savior will appear. What? Yeah, the savior is going to appear. What's his name? His name is Saoshyant. What? Saoshyant. You know Saoshyant, the great redeemer. Okay. Saoshyant. Saoshyant. He is born of a virgin. By the will of Ahura Mazda, this virgin was, by a miracle, impregnated by the mysterious seeds of Zarathustra that appeared while she was bathing in a lake called Kanzaba. Then Saoshyant is gifted with the power to heal the sick, to make the lame walk, and of course to raise the dead. Does this sound familiar at all? Okay, so what happens? Remember, this is before Christianity, right? So what happens is that he will raise the dead eventually from the house of song and the house of lies. They will be brought back, and there will be a great battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. Forces of light, you'll have the righteous fighting with the Yazata, right? Empowered by the Ameshespeta, power of Ahura Mazda, and they will fight the unrighteous who are following Angra Mainyu and the demons. There'll be this great battle, and in the end, hey, you have good will win the day. So everybody is then put before the throne of Ahura Mazda. And then what happens? Then behind them is this molten lake, like a lake of fire, but it's like a molten lake. And everybody is pushed into the molten lake. Both the righteous and the unrighteous. And the righteous will live because they are of fire, they are of light, they're of Ahura Mazda, and the evil will, of course, perish. So I'm actually reading right now. Here's a part of it right here, talking about it. So the final judgment of all souls will commence at the hands of Ahura Mazda, the judge, and all sinners punished, then forgiven, and humanity made immortal and free from hunger, thirst, poverty, old age, disease, and death. The world will be made perfect once again, as it was before the onslaught of the evil one. Such is the Farahak, the renovation brought on by the will of Ahura Mazda, happily ever after. Now, tell me, is there any similarity to this when it comes to apocalyptic Judaism and Christianity and Islam? Do you see any connections at all? You're seeing what the problem is. And you're thinking, wait a second, but this is just some ancient religion. No, it's a religion that is active today. It's everywhere. You want to know who the most famous practitioner of Mazdaism is? His name is Freddie Mercury. You guys ever heard of Freddie Mercury from Queen? Yeah, and he had the traditional funeral and everything. He was a practitioner. And now that you know this belief system, I challenge you to go through the lyrics of Queen, and you can see a lot of those ideas are threaded in the lyrics. He is a product of his beliefs. Fascinating, huh? Yeah. By the way, one of the largest elements of those practitioners of Mazdaism, they live in this place that is called, quite a few in India. There's a lot in India, less in Iran, some in Afghanistan, but it's really because of the Taliban, pretty much gone. But there's a whole bunch in a place called the United States and Canada. And one of the largest concentrations of practitioners of Ahura Mazda, followers of Ahura Mazda is? It's a place called Southern California. And it's a place called Pomona, Orange County, Los Angeles. You got it. It's a huge belief system here. You just didn't know it. So when I'm at the university, I teach my classes that are connected to world religions. And do I get, and of course, world civilization, do I get students who are practitioners? Almost every semester, I at least have one or two. So yes, and I have them write reflection papers, and I learn more about their beliefs from them. Is this good? So yeah, so this is kind of important. Okay, moving right along. So what happens is, according to this belief system, I'm looking at my time. I know we're going to go over. Just know that it's going to happen. So according to this belief system, each individual soul has what's called an urban. This is again the guardian spirit that I had mentioned. And what happens is that when you die, your urban, your soul leaves you. But the problem is that your soul, so your body still remains. Your body, the idea of death is a lie. It's not true. So the idea that your body is now being corrupted and decaying, this is a lie. So what do we do? Because what will happen is the empty flesh of the body will be inhabited by demons. We talked about these flies. So they even have prescriptions on the corruption that leads from a dead body. So they actually have, if you fall asleep and somebody dies nearby, they actually have a list of how many people have to go through purification, depending upon the status of the person who died, because the demons will enter into that body and corrupt a certain amount of people. I'll just give you one example. If the dead one be a priest, the Druze Nasha rushes forth, O Spitama Zarathustra, she goes as far as the 7th and defiles the 10th. so the corruption will go to pretty far, right? So you gotta do purification. So what happens now is you gotta dispose of the body. Well, how do you do that? Well, the long and the short of it is, in India they allow this happen. It's called, and they used to have this all over the place. They're called towers of silence. And so basically is you get put into, you die, they put you into a tower, and there's a shelf in the upper part of the tower, and they lay your bones, lay your body there, and then the birds eat the body. The birds eat the body, they clean off the bones. Then what happens is somebody who's supposed to work with the deceased, they take these bones, they put it into an ossuary, and then what they do is they pour lime on it. And then they diminish the bones further. And then as a result, they eventually pour it down the drain, and the body is completely destroyed. The idea is you cannot have anything left of your body. That has to be completely destroyed. Otherwise, it could be a point or a place of corruption. Well, it became illegal in a lot of places. So you're wondering, what do they do in the United States? You know, if you're a practitioner, what do? You know, do you do cremation maybe? The problem is, and it's a problem because there's division on this question, because fire is sacred. And if you do cremation, you're putting fire together with something that's corruptible. So in many cases, it's like, we'll dispose of it through acid and lime. And in the case of one of my students, it's done very much like some traditional Muslim burials, where they take the body, they cover it in lime, and they cover it over with just a sheet that kind of moves off from the coffin. It's dropped in the hole, they bury it over, and the body dissolves. Does that make sense? So that's one way they do it. But I do know of people illegally just having the bodies out in the middle of nowhere, but we won't go there. You know, traditionalists. So if you wonder, you know, not crime scene, just maybe practitioners. Who knows? Okay, so there you have. And if you want, you don't want to do this, but if you want to, you can. Google Towers of Silence, Mazdaism, or you have to use the word Zoroastrianism. Google that, go to Google Images, and you'll see pictures of this, and you'll just be like, wow, this is pretty interesting. So there you have it. Yeah, it sounds like a sky burial, right? Okay, other aspects here. You have, of course, you have a ritual called the yasna, which is basically, a ritual called, barsam. And the barsam is basically a bundle of twigs that used to be real twigs, but is used like a wand for purification by the priests, but used in the left hand. The Avestas also prescribe various medicinal remedies within a magical context that is to be used. I know I'm looking at my time. I don't want to go through all of these, but you know, the evil one, he did create 99,999 diseases. So there's a lot of diseases that need to be protected, need to be protected from. Okay. So let's talk about the hierarchy. The priests of Mazdaism have various grades. Specifically, you have the Herbat, the Mobad, and the Dastur. The Herbat are the lowest grade of the priesthood. They assist the other priests in the various yasna celebrations. The next level are the Mobads. The Mobad is a Middle Persian word for Magu Pati, or great teacher, or Magush, or Magos. And this, of course, are the Magi. And so the word Magi, in a sense, in this different form, is still being used for the priesthood of practitioners of Mazdaism to this day. And the highest one is the Distor. These are the all high priests of the clergy, and they exist amongst the Parsi of India. But I do want to say at least the lower two grades are amongst all those who are practitioners of Mazdaism. And I want to say that both those two grades are open to women as well as men. So the upper grade, which is India, is just men, but it's his own special kind of institution. You have the fire temples. There are fire temples that you can be visiting if you want here in the Los Angeles area. If you're interested in visiting the fire temple, you can. The fire temple, each temple has an innermost sanctum where only priests are permitted to enter. It's usually closed off, and it has a double domed roof, which permits the smoke from the fire to escape. To emphasize fire as the primary focus, there are no other lights in the inner sanctum. Each temple is intentionally designed to have no direct sunlight. So the fire is the center of the ritual. A bell always hangs from one corner of the fire temple, which is rung 5 times a day, at which is called a boi, B-O-I ceremony, which literally means good scent ceremony, and marks the beginning of each ga or watch. So the day is split into 5 different watches, in which there are 5 boi ceremonies that are performed. So when you go in, if you want to offer up something, you come in during that time, and that's where the priests are giving the sacrifices. Got it? Let's move on. Laymen who are coming in to the fire temple, you have to bring with you some sandalwood, sweet smelling sandalwood. You go to the antechamber, and typically you then give it to a priest who has his mouth and nose covered. Sounds familiar, right? Mouth and nose covered with a cloth, so they don't pollute the offering by breathing upon it. So he takes the sandalwood. The priest then would use a pair of silver tongs to place the wood into the fire. Then, of course, the ritual is done. And then the priest uses a ritual ladle to gather the ash, and the ash is then placed upon the forehead and the eyelids of the person who made that offering, and that sanctification, the holiness of the offering from Uhura Mazda, from this fire sacrifice, then goes upon you. Then extras of the ash is placed into a little container, and you take that home and bring that to your own fire altar, and you mix that in, and that brings the power of that blessing to your home. Does that make sense? So this is what they have. So some people are interested in this. You can do this if you want to visit the fire temple. You can just make sure you bring the sandalwood. In some cases, you can just buy it right there. There's the one in Los Angeles. You can buy it right there at the gift shop. Okay, moving right along. I'm telling you, oh, this is a real belief. This is a real belief. Okay. Of course, the most frequent fire ceremonies are called the yasta, where one sacrifices sacred liquor. I got your attention. Before the sacred flames, before the liquor is offered, parts of the sacred text are recited. They also offer bread and milk. And before, it used to be meat and animal fat, but they got rid of that. They also have something called the Homa sacrifice. The Homa sacrifice, if it sounds like Soma sacrifice, that's because there's a connection to it. The Homa means that which is pressed. And it refers to 2 plants that are pressed and then mixed with milk, and then offered during the water ceremony at the end of the boy ceremony. And so you mix it together with milk. Of course, you know that the mixture has something that's known as ephedra. You guys have heard of ephedra? You probably do. Basically, this stimulates the brain, greatly speeds up the heart rate, cleans up the bronchial tubes. Your blood pressure rises up, but it gives you a sense of intoxication. It gives you a high. So basically, you're taking this and you're getting a little bit, ooh, what's going on here? And this is part of that mystical moment. It is illegal in the United States since 2004, but it is still used in other parts. So they have a substitute for it here. Is this interesting? You guys learning something? Yeah, okay. As I said before, you have the water rituals is performed not only in the temple, it's performed in various villages and places to give good luck. So sometimes you will, lay people will mix majoram leaves with rose petals with milk, and sometimes with the fruit, and then they'll put this in the river and this is supposed to be giving you some kind of good luck on some different level. And another case, like in India, some people just, they toss sweet pastry in the river, and there it is. I'll take care of it. We have good luck. That'll work out. We're going to sum up a little bit though, but I want to make sure we get some areas. Monotheism is not a proselytizing religion. It doesn't believe in forcing people, people to follow their belief system. In fact, there's something called the Master Law of Areta, and the idea is that the concept is that everybody has the truth within their religions. You just have to find it, and there is Ahura Mazda that is the God behind the gods. So all can be potentially saved. You just have to realize it within your own belief. Does that help? So that's their perception. Okay, let's see here. More rituals. What I love about monotheism is there's so much into loving the earth and the environment. And they even have a passage which I want to read, but I can't because it goes for pages, about how to make the earth happy. Isn't that interesting? How to make the earth happy. And so it gives, the ideas of how we are to participate with the earth and do various things, prayers and blessings upon the animals, upon the plants, but also getting along with each other is good to the earth. So that means, it is a place where the faithful erects a house with cattle, with a wife, children, good herds, goes on and on. But it's kind of a beautiful thing that you have a belief system so early on saying that we shouldn't trash the earth, that we should preserve it. So many of those who are monotheists are also environmentalists. They believe that the earth is precious and we must protect it. They say, "Oh, maker of the material world, thou holy one." So the earth is still holy. Yes, you have corruption, you have lies of decay, but when it comes to the powers of creation are always the truth. The powers of multiplicity are always the truth, because it comes, of course, from the female aspects of the Amesha Spenta, that is Ahura Mazda. Now, all this is making sense to you now, right? When I'm saying all this. Okay. Of course, it does mention all the things that make the earth unhappy. There's a list of that, and you can understand what that would be. When it comes to morality, I'll just mention something real quick. One assertion runs, he that does not restore a loan to the man who lent it steals a thing and robs the man. This he doth every day, every night, as long as he keeps in this house his neighbor's property, as though it was his own. So the idea is that if you borrow something with the intention of keeping it, every day it's as if you have committed theft. And so that's bad, right? They also believe in various contracts with, first of all, of course, they say that an oral contract, word of mouth contract is sacred. If you make a promise, you better keep it, right? The second is a hand contract. If you shake hands on it, you better keep it. The third is amount of sheep. Okay, now we're moving into something, I'll give you sheep to make sure that, we have this promise. The fourth is amount of oxen. The fifth is a contract amongst men, which is a promise of marriage. So, have that. And the sixth is, of course, giving of fields. So there you have it. There is also laws against, again, violence. Another thing I like about monotheism is that it really goes against violence towards your fellow man. So I'm going to give you a little bit here. If a man rise up with a weapon in his hand, it is agrata. If he brandishes it, it is avarishta. If he actually smites a man with malicious afterthought, it is aradush. Upon the fifth aradish, he becomes a pashto. And so what is this all about? So basically, if somebody brandishes a weapon in turn to do harm, to kill somebody else, that is forbidden. unless it is within a context of fighting to support those who are righteous. So any other violence you can't do. So you have also the brandisher, show basically a weapon in order to hurt or kill someone. Also a smiter without injury. So basically what happens is if you do any kinds of actions to harm somebody with a weapon, uh, without the idea of protecting another life, Mazdaism says you can't do it. I don't know of any other religion that does that. Does that make sense? So interesting stuff. We're closing up, but I want to make sure we get to the idea that yes, they do have many practitioners are vegetarian, but they do. But if you're a meat eater, that's fine too. When it comes to, unfortunately, anything that is dead, it's considered impure. So that means when you shave, you gotta put your stubble into a special container and bury it a certain distance from where you have shaved, because those dead hairs will be occupied by possible demons. You can see how that works. If you get your hair cut, you got to collect the hair. When it comes to menstruation, unfortunately, that's considered impure, and so menstruation it's considered a time of impurity. However, having said that, it's not connected to women per se. Women are understood as equal. Menstruation, which is a strange thing, is considered separate. It's just like the impurity, just as much as the men's razor stubble is impure, so is the blood that leaves the body. Is that making sense? So it's not specifically against women, although it does seem to be in many ways. And of course, you're going to have various, when it comes to marriage, if you get married, they put, everybody is wearing white, and you have a white handkerchief over their heads, over the couple. And then you're going to get honey, sorry, honey, a sugar cubes, sometimes mixed with honey, and you rub them together. That means that you're going to have a sweet life later on. And then afterwards, this white handkerchief, this white cloth, this veil is put over the couple. It's sewed together, meaning that they will be united for the rest of their term on this earth. I do have to say that when it comes to the various celebrations, so much involves the times of the various seasons of astrology, of the equinox, of the solstices. They have 6 major celebrations. And I just want to add that most of it is all about eating tons of food. They all begin with a hearty breakfast. You go to the temple, you make your offerings, and then they spend a good amount of time just eating tons of food and feasting. For those practitioners of Mazdaism, they do not believe at all in the idea of how do I say this? Of staying away from food. My brain just died there. Of fasting, no fasting, but don't overindulge either. So eat, enjoy life. Also, I want to mention that some of the rituals, some of the things they drink are supposed to inflame passion, because procreation is a great thing. Because remember, the creative act is that which makes more things. And that's in connection to Ahura Mazda. It's sanctified. So please do. And we're going to help you so you can keep doing that for a long time to come. And so it's all about enjoying sex. It's all about enjoying good food. It's all about enjoying great company. They have a lot of music in their celebrations. I don't know. It's not too bad. Does that make sense? Do you feel like you're learning a lot? Now, remember, this is a belief system that is just around the corner. Most likely, somewhere in your neighborhood, there's a practitioner of Ahura, followers of Ahura Mazda. But here's the problem. That is, this is also a much persecuted belief system. And so many of the practitioners will say, oh, I follow a Persian religion, or they make the assumption, oh, they must be Muslim. They'll say, we worship a great God. I worship God. Oh, you must be Muslim, or you must be Christian. Then they go, yeah, that's true. Oh, we'll go with that. I was teaching a class. It was actually a world civilization A class, and I'm talking about all this. And the lady, one of the ladies in class, going, "Oh wait, but this is my roommate. All this is what my roommate did." I thought this was, she didn't even know her own roommate was a practitioner of Mazdaism. So I hope I kind of unfolded the mystery just a little bit. There's a whole lot more, but because of not enough time, I can't give you more. But I hope you enjoyed this rather out of the box kind of presentation. For me, usually in the past, I would be sitting down if I was on Zoom. But then, of course, it had me later on. We've been doing these outside and I get to pace around. But because of technical difficulties, I'm talking to an iPhone. It's a little awkward doing that. So I'm hoping you guys got the message and things made sense. Talking to an iPhone with all these lights upon you. you just can't make this up. But look, apparently I have the light perhaps of Ahura Mazda shining upon you, and many blessings to you. And I hope you have a great night. If you have any questions, please ask. All right. Thank you, Wayne. Any questions from here? Yeah. Where is Angru Manu? Where does he come from? You're kind of asking the question, where is the origins of this evil? And if the idea that he comes from the collective chaos of what he is not, that which is light, that which is spirit, that which is harmony. And so he emerges out of the realm of the chaos and the darkness. And I know, we're back into this philosophical topic, right? Yeah, but, don't they ask questions like that? Where does it emerge from? And unfortunately, for so much of the history of theology, that seemed to be enough. That seemed to be sufficient, that which is light, the absence of light must be darkness. The absence of spirit has to be material. So Angru Manu is, in a sense, this realm that resides below, that perhaps always had been there, because accordingly, Ahura Mazda had always been in existence. And so maybe it took a while for Angru Manu to sort of organize himself to become an opposing force. But it is a difficult question. And it's a good one, though. Any other questions?
Is there a religion or cult that's in opposition to Zoroastrianism? Just like here in the Christian-dominated West, you have your Satanists.
Right. Okay. So basically, you're trying to say, are there, there's people who follow Ahura Mazda, they're worshipers. Are there any Angru Manu worshipers out there? It's like, it's like it's almost like the false prophets. and here's the interesting part. While I do not know of any specific group that takes on that title, I do know that the perception is from many of those who follow Mazdaism is that certain people in other religions who do not follow the all-high God Ahura Mazda within their own religious system is by default followers of Angru Manu. So that's not just meaning those who are unfaithful, like for example within Christianity, you have those people who follow Jesus Christ, follow Father, Son, Holy Spirit, their actions, and you have those who do not believe. Those are unbelievers. You have that concept. Well, it goes a little further because in Mazdaism, so much is action oriented. It's about what you do. It's about your deeds. So that means that Christians who do not follow after the deeds in their mind that connects with not just the Christian God, but Ahura Mazda. If they don't follow that, even though they say they follow the Christian God, by default, they are followers of Angra Mainyu. Does that make sense? Because it's upon your action. Does that make sense? You guys got it? So that means within Islam, you have people who are followers of Ahura Mazda because they interpret Allah in the way that's consistent with the ideas of Mazdaism. But you have also Muslims who worship Allah in ways that are considered inconsistent, and thereby default, they're followers of Angra Mainyu. Right? So the same thing, and you can see that happens, but also the idea of image worshiping seems to be problematic within belief systems. You saw that with the Bodhi, right? With the Buddha concept. So the idea of worshiping various images, there's iconoclastic aspect within some aspects, some followers of Mazdaism, not all. Once again, we have a problem because you got practitioners of Mazdaism from India and Afghanistan, Persia, Canada, and United States, California, right? As if California is not the United States, but I'm talking about California. You have that the diversity there, and the thing is, many times they take on aspects of their cultures that they're within. So you're going to see more of a iconoclastic against images feel, especially in places like Persia, and Afghanistan, and a little bit more loosey goosey if you get to India. Depends. Does that make sense? So you do have influence going on there, and I noticed that practitioners of Mazdaism in the United States and Canada, they wax oftentimes a little bit more philosophical, a little bit more humanitarian, a little bit more environmental, a little bit more, hey, look at our religion always taught the idea that the genders are equal, right? So there's a little bit more of that social aspect, which would not be as overt, let's just say in Iran or Afghanistan or India. Does that make sense? And you do say in India, the Mazdaism is a little bit more patriarchal. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. You mentioned the Mahayana influences. What's the time frame for that? The reason why I asked is I remember you did a talk on Mahayanism a couple of years ago, I believe. And
yep.
I remember you pointing out their sculpture, the very naturalistic
Yep.
And that apparently was a Greek influence on it.
Yep.
So I had the impression that Mahayana began at that time. So if that's the case, that'd be what, 4th century?
So what's going to happen is that you have the Avestas and you have the later Avestas, just like you have with the Hebrew Bible. You're going to have various Avestas written over a period of time. You have this within Hinduism too. Hinduism, you got the Vedas, and then you have, that's between, there's a reason why I'm doing this, between 1500 to 1000 BCE, and then after that, you got the Brahmanas, the Upanishads, and that brings us from the tens, from 1000 to around 700 to 500. Upanishads really 700 to 500. So you have that kind of that much in time when it comes to these sacred writings. But you have more writings coming about when it comes to the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayanas. So what happens is that within I'm going to say Zoroastrianism, Mazdaism, you're going to have these texts, the Avestas, and you have the early Avestas, which I just described, that seem to me to be between 700 to 500, BCE. But some people say it goes back to the 1500, so almost parallels the time of the Vedas. Are you getting okay? And then what happens is you have the later writings, and these later writings seem to be dating from the 400s, the 300s, and the 200s BCE. The one that mentions those who are the practitioners of Buddhism, the demon, That text seems to be dating from around the 3 to 200s. So it's a later text, just like the Ramayana is a later text. So they just keep adding texts. In fact, they keep adding texts all the way to the time of the Sassanids, and it kind of concludes around the 600 CE. However, having said that, the eschatological ideas that I mentioned were already in the third book, which goes back again between 700 to 500 BCE. It still predates the Judaism that has the apocalyptic Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Does that make sense? But you still have more texts that are being added on. Mahayana Buddhism, obviously, it stems from the time of Ashoka, right? So this seems to be the 200s. So, some people say, but there's a form of Mahayana Buddhism that is a little bit earlier. That, remember, Ashoka had during this time, the council, right, the Great Council, you had this contest with these two movements, and one will become the Theravada Buddhism, and one will become Mahayana Buddhism, right? Remember this? So there was an earlier form of Mahayana Buddhism that had already been starting to spread in the West. So that could be in the 300s. Does that make sense? 300s, 200s, Mahayana Buddhism. I'm answering the question, I believe, right? Yeah. So you do have, sorry, those people online, very complicated question, but I think you understand, even without me repeating it, what I'm talking about is the idea that the proscription against Buddhism, especially the veneration of images, connected to Mahayana Buddhism. How can we date that when it comes to the tradition of the Avestas, the writings of Mazdaism? And how you do it is there are later writings that continue all the way to the end of the Sassanid Empire, and that's the answer. So, wow, okay. Thank you, Jack. Nice long question. You're gonna dredge up a third question. Okay, so hopefully I answered that well enough, right? Okay, all right. Any questions online at all? The idea of soul? Oh, okay. Yes. So the idea is that, well, you do have individual souls, yes, but everything is connected in a sense to the fire of Ahura Mazda. You're right in that sense. So there is that connection. But you have the individual soul. At least we think it's our individual soul. We're ensouled, and we do have the idea that those who are good, their fire will continue for all eternity. But I know what you're saying, because those who are not good, they're put into that molten river, right? That molten river, and their fire is extinguished. So there's a separation, but in a sense, that fire is extinguished, and so the question is, what happens to it? I will say this: certain practitioners of Mazdaism say that that's getting off easy. Those evil people, they went to this, they're in a house of lies. They did all these evil things, and they just get extinguished in this molten river. So there are those who will say, you know what? The soul goes on, and they continue in the realm of fire. And then what happens is that's the influence of Christianity and Islam intervening into their eschatology. It is a purifying fire. Yes. Oh, yeah. In fact, purifying fire was purifying, but they're destroyed. Okay, right. I get it. Okay, but those who are good, they remain. But those who are good still have aspects of them that are not pure. Right. But that higher soul, the higher mind aspect continues. Yeah. So what happens is the fire burns away any negativity or dirt that are stained upon even the redeemed souls. So that way, so it's kind of a nice bath for everybody, right? The flames, if you're good, will survive, but it will clean up in a alchemical way, because alchemy does kind of connect. It'll clear up the impurities, and so you'll become more pure. And for those who are made of a weaker substance material, they are absolved. They're gone. So, but everything about Mazdaism seems to be about purity, right? Ritual purity. And I didn't go into this, but there's a lot of extra things that you have to do if you do something that's impure. It's like you got to say various prayers, make various offerings, because heaven forbid, you do something that's impure, then you got to spend some time. I mean, they're very detailed. Now, however, having said that, it gets really detailed. As I said, if somebody dies, they determine how many people have to go through purification based upon if you're laying in the same house, or when it comes to menstruation, if you slept with your wife and she was menstruating, you have to give away a bunch of sheep, as compensation, to the temple, to be sold, hey, it's great financial. However, having said that, many practitioners of Mazdaism will tell me, you know what, we don't do any of that. They're all, well, why don't you do that? It's in the Avestas. And they'll look back at me and say, you have a book called Leviticus. They're all, yeah. Well, do you do everything that's in the book of Leviticus? No. Well, we don't do that anymore because those Avestas have, we moved on from that. So there is a sense of a progression. So they look at this like today. I don't think they're going to be like going, oh, somebody, grandma died. I guess we have to all go through purification. Although in some cases there is that purification. Oh, I gotta tell you this. One thing is this. I'm sorry, I'll mention this. Is that if somebody dies in your house, if you can remove your house, that's a good idea. So it's like what? So you tear down your house, and a lot of practitioners go, no, we're not going to tear down the house because grandpa died in it. That's ridiculous. So they go, the idea is the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law, right? So that's how they go. So again, practitioners are very much have evolved. Well, it depends again on where you're at. If you're in the United States, some of my students, they just go, we don't do that. Why would we do that? But in certain countries, you'll have those who are literalists. So it depends on what community we're talking about. So some people who are practitioners of Mazdaism may be watching this going, yeah, Dr. Rietveld, I agree. And others will be going, no, that's not true. You're a heretic. Like, I'm not part of your belief. Or maybe I practice and follow Ahura Mazda in my own way. But what I'm trying to tell you is it's just like explaining Christianity. You're going to have those who are Catholics going, and those who are Protestants going, so there's so much diversity there. And unfortunately, there's a lot of diversity because of all the persecutions and the fact that they're spread throughout all these different areas. So a lot of people say, well, at least we have the Avestas that hold us together. And a lot has to do with interpretation, but also custom and tradition. How's that? Okay, did you guys enjoy yourselves? One more.
Look, this is an easy one.
It's an easy one. Okay.
Where is the fire temple exactly?
There is one in downtown Los Angeles. And the funny thing is that one, if you're watching, that one does believe in spreading the message of Ahura Mazda. So it's one of the few.
What's the question?
Where is the fire temple located? There's one in LA. They have a gift shop. They're in Riverside. There used to be one in Claremont, but all you have to do is look in your don't look in your phone book because we don't do that anymore. Well, just Google fire temple. They'll use the word Zoroastrianism. Maybe you want to do Mazdayana, maybe that too, and it will come up. And they will, because I've done it, they will let you in, and they'll let you observe. Hopefully, the one in Los Angeles, they'll let me in. I mean, they let me in, so and I can observe. So,
do you happen to recall by chance their hours?
I don't know their hours because of COVID. Did Lauren visit? think Lauren visited one time, but yeah, as well. He's more up to date. But yeah, I went there years ago during my Claremont years. So, where, you visit these. So the last time it was that one was in 2006. It's been a while. I guess I got to get back to the fire temple,
Field trip.
Field trip. Yeah. So any other questions? Oh, another. Okay. Yes.
The six divine sparks.
Yeah.
Your evil
The
counterparts,
Meshaspentas. Yeah. The evil Meshaspentas.
are they also considered sparks?
Are they also are they all considered sparks? In many ways, they're considered just emanations, because the idea of fire is Ahura Mazda. But I'm using the word in the figurative sense of the spark, like in spirit. In that sense, they're sparks, but they're not fire sparks. So there's nothing fire about Agramanya. It's no fire on, fire is sacred, water is sacred, earth is sacred, air is sacred, and yes, you got the elements involved and spirit within them all. So you do have the four elements, but everything Agramanya does is just the opposite. He's Dr. Evil, right? If there's a good form of something, there's always evil, and that is to be understood within all things. So just know that if something good happens, there's something evil that wants to compensate, and there's always this battle between the forces of light, forces of darkness. So you got to make sure Shirosha will help you. I'm sounding like I'm prescribing ideas. Sure, pray to Shirosha. He'll protect you. But the idea is in that don't let that vacuum in. The idea is fill it in with Ahura Mazda, fill it in with the Ameshaspeta that are holy, fill it in with good things, good thoughts, because the absence therein, because Druze will actually do this, will actually tell you to do the exact opposite. And so in the absence of following that is good, the Druze, the lies, will fulfill and fill in and take over. Even your corpse, when your spirit leaves, the lies the demons will fill your flesh. So there's always a dualism. Does that help? So always balance in everything. And of course, when it comes to their medicine, everything's all about balance too. Harmony of the land, harmony of the genders, harmony in all things. Yes.
I have a conceptual question.
A conceptual question. We get another question.
You often use the word emanations.
Emanation. Yes.
Now, I have a sense of what that means, but does that concept originate with Mazdaism?
Oh,
or is it something like a blending that just of the religions that produced?
Okay, so the idea of emanation, what I find is fascinating. It all has to do with, where in time these ideas come about. It looks like we already have early on within Mazdaism this idea of this movement of Ahura Mazda, Ameshaspenta, these various worlds, and these moving from light into darkness. It seems to be pretty early on. We also see this in Egyptian beliefs. We see this. So this is an ancient belief that seems to be predate the philosophical. Because again, it's all about that which you observe. If I look up into the sky, I see the sun. Oh, it's really bright. And I see things that are less bright. Following that, and then moves into something that's darker. So common sense would be, if and remember early on, Paleolithic, Neolithic age, they will look at the sky, they'll see the sun as the image of the sky god, right? They'll have this connection with the sky god. And so this idea of light, darkness, this idea of this realm in between will be pretty obvious to even those who are not as organized in a religious sense. So they're going to place over these concepts in that way. Having said that, then what will happen is in the philosophical age, they will articulate the same ideas using philosophical words. But you still have this idea of this radiating aspect of God. And you're going to see that even in the Hebrew Bible. You have the idea of God, his power is radiating forth. And they use basically the word is fullness of God, the radiating aspect of God. And that goes all the way back. I mean, however early you want to date the Hebrew Bible text, but we do know firmly that's still before the philosophical age, between 700 to 500 BCE, which is also known as the axial age. So still predates it, but what will happen is those ideas will become articulated in a philosophical way. And then what will happen is the later Avestas become more philosophical. They will start to take on these philosophical notions that we've gained from Plato or Aristotle, got it? And then those ideas will be imported back into monotheism to help further define these ideas. Just like you have within Christianity, it's a growth from Hellenistic Judaism, which has Platonic philosophical aspects, and you have like the Gospel of John, which is very philosophical, right? So so one influences the other. So basically, you have so basically you have monotheism, other ancient beliefs, even Hinduism, right? You got Sarah's, you got Brahma, right? And then Brahma with Sarasvati, and whoop, you got Lakshmi, right? And Vishnu with Lakshmi, and you got over here, you got Shiva and whatever female consort he has, quite a few, Durga, Kali, But what happens, you have this early idea. It's not really early. We're kind of going into the 300s BCE, which the emergence of Hinduism. Is this helpful? So these ideas are there, but what will happen is philosophical ideas will be imported back into these religions. So it is. It really is, and it's problematic because it's like the answer is yes, no, no, yes. so cart before the horse, chicken and egg, and of course, hey, the universe was at first egg shaped, right? So maybe it's the egg that's first, right? If you're practical. Hey, but then you have the holy rooster, so I don't know. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm trying to work on another one.
Wow, there's a lot of questions on this one. But the point is, we're learning, right?
I was going to ask you about alcohol. When you kind of mentioned
Alcohol?
In the sacred sense.
Yep.
And I was thinking when you said bad food and fruit goes bad, but fruit turns into alcohol when it goes bad.
Right.
So I was going to mention that, and I was like, is alcohol bad? But then they have a sacred alcohol. So I was going to ask about that more.
Alcohol has to go through a special process
That makes sense.
to be pure. So everything has to, but they definitely approve of alcohol, especially they're very much in the wine. And the idea of feeling tipsy from our perspective is just being filled with the Spirit. And I gotta tell you, it depends if you're invited to a celebration. Some of these celebrations depends on which one you're invited to. It also depends on which microculture of Mazdaism you're invited to. But I gotta tell you, it can be a great time. I mean, really, the food is amazing. So that's my plug. So basically, I'm trying to tell you is visit the fire temple, make some friends of Mazdaism, and be invited over for dinner. If those who are practitioners of Mazdaism are listening, I'm not serious, or maybe I am. So, well, at least it's a positive representation, right? Good food, good fellowship. Because remember one more thought on this. Remember, the Avestas mentioned that the place of that is of lies. The food is not very good. So apparently, good food is to be appreciated in the house of song and paradise in the afterlife. Good food, good company. Huh? Eat, drink, and be merry. And you see, there's also connections with the happiness and this equality and celebration of life with Sikhism. Yeah. And the Sikhs also have many of the same ideas. And you can see these correlations coming in. That, oh yeah, well, this is another belief system that seems to have some of the same ideas, but that's a whole other territory, even though it's way later on. All right, I guess we're closing up. I see people folding up their chairs. I still see people here. I don't know how that happened, but thank you for listening in for so long. I will say good night to all of you. Thank you so much for being here, and may you be blessed. Right.